Welcome back to another FPL video and podcast. This will be the transfer tips for Gameweek 21, where I highlight 11 players to buy, hold, sell and skip. There's a decent break until the next deadline, but all the usual content will be on this channel. The reaction stream has already been posted over the weekend and we hit 31,000 subscribers during that stream. So thank you very much for your support. The growth since the summer has been incredible and we're looking to reach new goals across all social media platforms in 2025. You can follow me on X and Instagram. It's still an RCM. The links are in the description. The same goes for my Blue Sky. Just type in FPL Dylan and you can also find me. The Discord server, FPL League, Draft Hound, as well as Spotify are also down there in the description. And you can also check out Patreon and the championships. There's currently a 20% discount on Patreon, so you can gain early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. The first purchase I'm going to recommend is Bryan Mbeumo. I've discussed holding him in my recent Transfer Tips podcast, and I just think he's fixture proof. One of my best decisions this season has been keeping him throughout some of these really difficult fixtures. Now, buying him in Gameweek 21 is a little bit awkward because the next two games are Man City and Liverpool at home, but I still think Man City is a great fixture for attackers and they've been conceding so many chances ever since Rodri's injury. So Mbeumo can still score in that game. He did it against Arsenal not so long ago, and that 19 point against Southampton has meant that Mbeumo is now the second most transferred in player going into Gameweek 21. Only Anthony Gordon has more. 13 goals and 3 assists for the Cameroonian winger with an XGI figure of 10.88, which is very decent to say the least, and 136 FPL points. For me, he's quite clearly shown he is the third best midfielder in FPL behind Salah and Palmer, and he arguably offers the best value of any option in that position. His price has gone up overnight to 7.8 million and his ownership is only increasing. It's around 31.9% at the time of this recording, and other stats include 12 big chances, 37 key passes and 9 big chances created, and most of the stats are very decent. He's a clinical finisher and very versatile. He can play anywhere along the front three. I think Bryan Mbeumo is a buy. It might be slightly awkward to buy him in right now, and I certainly wouldn't do it in Gameweek 22 per se, but in the long term, I struggle to see any midfielder who offers better value. Konate returned from injury in a 2-2 draw against Manchester United, but I think he played fairly well, and as an FPL asset, if you're looking to invest in Liverpool right now, with a potential double in Gameweek 24 or 25, I think Konate might be the best value defender that Liverpool have on offer. Trent is still the kind of ideal pick, and if you have the money, I'd certainly recommend going to him. Van Dijk has got the biggest threat from set pieces, but Konate also offers set piece threat of his own with 1 goal and 1 assist this season, but only 1 bonus point. So with him, don't expect to see many 10 plus pointers as you would see with Trent Alexander-Arnold, but he's a massive differential with 3.1% ownership and his price tag is very accessible for a lot of people. If you are looking in the market for a defender to bolster your defensive line and also set yourself up for a potential double and invest in one of the best defenses in the Premier League, I think Konate is a great solution. Buying him in this week is also a little bit awkward and Liverpool could concede feasibly in the next 2 matches against Nottingham Forest and Brentford away. Maybe the best time to buy Konate would be Gameweek 23, where you walk into Ipswich Town at home and a potential double in either Gameweek 24 or 25. But Konate has 47 FPL points for the season, and I think that's a massive boost for Liverpool. The fact he's returned now from injury and he can do really well in Joe Gomez's absence. And Konate is first choice. Could his minutes be managed at some stage with a very hectic fixture schedule for Liverpool in January? Yes, that could be the case, but I think he starts most Premier League games, and as long as he can stay fit, I think he's a great purchase in FPL. Lewis Hall is the most informed fantasy defender with 42 points in the last 5 game weeks, and I think he offers tremendous value at 4.9 million. The upcoming fixtures are very promising, but with any Newcastle player, and I'd also encourage with most transfers this week, be very careful because we've got Carabao Cup semi-finals in midweek and also FA Cup matches before the Gameweek 21 deadline. So try to hold off on some of these transfers if possible, and once we know for sure they're going to be available for the upcoming deadline, make the move. And I think Lewis Hall is right up there with the best defenders in the game. He is 4th in terms of FPL points in that position with 4 assists, 27 key passes and 79 FPL points. Wolves at home and Southampton away over the next 3 game weeks looks very enticing, although Wolves will have Mateus Cunha back from suspension, so that's not going to be the best fixture of them all. Southampton away would definitely be kind of locked in for a clean sheet, you could argue, especially given their recent performances despite having a new manager. And I think Lewis Hall can be a very good option at this price point and below, although you've got competition with Robinson, Munoz and a few others I've discussed in my recent wildcard and Transfers podcast as well. Lewis Hall also has 4 big chance created, which isn't great to be fair, and you could argue it's slightly unsustainable the run he's on with an expected assist figure of 3.11, which is very good, but he doesn't offer much in terms of goal threat with 6 shots inside the box and only 1 shot on target. But Lewis Hall is a purchase. He's probably second in terms of Newcastle assets, and Anthony Gordon is third. Isak clearly being the best option that the Toon have to offer, and I think a Newcastle triple-up is viable. In recent weeks, I discussed holding Jackson, and my opinion hasn't changed generally speaking, and I do think he's one of the best forwards in FPL, but you could use him as a cash cow to buy Trent at the back, maybe Gordon in the midfield, and upgrade from Semenyo, to name one particular example. And in those situations, I think selling Jackson is justified, but I could see him hauling against the likes of Wolves and West Ham, which he did in the reverse fixtures. But Bournemouth and Man City look quite tough on paper, especially Bournemouth at this moment in time. Jackson has good stats like 9 goals, 4 assists, an XG figure of 8.89. In the last couple of game weeks, I think that's an XG figure of around 0.3. He hasn't really had too many chances, although you could argue against Crystal Palace, he should have scored a goal or 2 at the very least. And that's 96 FPL points for the Senegalese forward, 47 shots inside the box, and 17 big chances. I think Jackson remains one of the best forwards in FPL, but in my own team selection, I'm actually looking to sell him to make other moves in the midfield. Arsenal haven't kept a clean sheet in 9 consecutive away games in the Premier League, and that's simply not good enough for a 5.6 million goalkeeper like David Raya, or even the likes of Gabriel, Timber, Saliba in that defensive line. I think Arsenal will start to keep clean sheets on their travels, but they need to do it fast. Their fixture schedule is maybe slightly promising in terms of their away opponents, but at the same time, I think Arsenal can be very frustrating. They are keeping clean sheets at the Emirates more often than not, but their upcoming fixtures aren't looking too great, despite 4 of the next 6 being at home across all competitions. They face Tottenham, Aston Villa and Man City over the next 4 game weeks in FPL, and you've got Wolves away in the process, but with the form Cunha's in and the response after the appointment of Vitor Pereira, that could be a tricky game for the Gunners as well. That's 7 clean sheets for David Raya and co, 49 saves, which is more than last season actually, which is incredible, and an XGC figure, expected goals conceded, of 18.02 and 78 FPL points. For me, the podium of the best goalkeepers remains the same. Pickford is first, Sell second, and Raya third. And in the coming weeks, if you are looking to maybe upgrade your midfield and go to Gordon and are maybe struggling for funds and you need 0.2, 0.3 million more, Raya to Pickford could be an excellent move, especially if Everton double in Game Week 24 or 25. But in most scenarios, I would hold David Raya. There's a lot of interest in Kerkez and Howson because of their recent performances and FPL output. I think they're 2 very promising defenders with a lot of potential. They're linked to big clubs in January and the summer, but their upcoming fixtures for Bournemouth are very tough. Chelsea and Newcastle away, followed up by Nottingham Forest and Liverpool at home. Bournemouth can get some results in these games and maybe keep a clean sheet or 2, and they surprised people against Tottenham with that 1-0 win, keeping the clean sheet, and also going to Old Trafford and winning 3-0 once again. And Milos Kerkez, I think, is worth holding on to if you've got the Hungarian left back. He's got that attacking potential. He's really stepped up with his output this season. 22 key passes is okay. It's not the greatest stat, but for a left back, I think it's fairly decent. 1 goal and 3 assists, of course, is the standout, and 75 FPL points. And I was wrong about Bournemouth. I thought they wouldn't keep many clean sheets this season, and they are doing it more often than I expected. His ownership is 7%. I just wouldn't invest in Kerkez right now though, and if you kind of missed out on all these hauls, I'd rather invest in Munoz, Lewis Hall, Robinson and other defenders with better fixtures than Bournemouth. But if you have Kerkez and Howson, I think they're worth holding on to in the long term. Having said that, I'd be more inclined to sell Semenyo, Kluivert and potentially Evanilson. I think these Bournemouth attackers are more disposable than Kerkez and Howson, for example, and that's because you've got more options in those positions, particularly in the midfield. Morgan Rogers is the outstanding budget midfielder. You've also got Amad Diallo. Maybe some of you might consider Iwobi, although I'm not too keen on him as a purchase. And you've also got a few others there, especially around the mid-price range like Gordon and Mbeumo. If you can upgrade Semenyo to one of them, I'd happily do so, even if it means selling Jackson, for example. And Semenyo's upcoming fixtures are quite poor on paper, but he has scored against some of these opponents in the reverse fixture, like Newcastle and Nottingham Forest. And one trend we've seen with Semenyo is when you start him with a plum fixture, he tends to blank, but then when you bench him when he's got a more difficult game on paper. He gets a return when you least expect him to. So don't be surprised if you sell Semenyo and he gets a goal or two over the next 4 game weeks. But my point stands, there are better midfielders elsewhere like Morgan Rogers, and that's why Semenyo, despite 78 shots, 5 goals and 2 assists, and I have to say the shot count is outstanding. A lot of them are ambitious efforts, and he's a very ambitious shooter. He shoots on sight, we all know this. He's a good winger, and he's linked to a lot of clubs as well, but I think there are better options in that midfield. Martin Odegaard was exceptional when he first returned from injury. That performance against Chelsea coupled with the assist, then the goal against West Ham from the penalty spot, also against Sporting, and Arsenal were just clicking in that moment. I thought Odegaard was a good purchase at the time, but he hasn't gotten any return since then. Only 1 goal and 2 assists this season, and 5 big chance created. He is one of the best midfielders in the Premier League, but he hasn't really shown it this season, and I think it's been a stop-start campaign due to injuries, and recently he has been affected by illnesses, and he's probably going to be in top shape against Tottenham at home should nothing happen against Newcastle in the Carabao Cup semi-finals, but I think Odegaard is worth selling. You can even go to Bruno Fernandes, but my favourite midfielders are Mbeumo and Gordon, apart from the obvious Salahs and Palmers of the world. I think all of those options offer better value than Odegaard and more consistency, especially in front of goal. With Arsenal attackers, I think Saka or nothing really is my policy, but if you wanted to go there, I think somebody like Jesus, Havertz or Martinelli would be even better options than Odegaard at this moment in time, and I think Kai Havertz, once he's back from illness, might be number 1, and then Gabriel Jesus would be second if he can stay fit. But Martin Odegaard needs to step up his output big time, and Arsenal need him in this run-in. Now, last season, he had that kind of winter period, and he is called Winterguard by some Arsenal fans because he was exceptional from December until the very end of the season, and we could see something similar happen this time round. But I think Martin Odegaard is a sell. Enzo Fernandez had a purple patch earlier this season, but I discussed skipping him, and ever since that's happened, he's got 1 assist. I don't think he offers bad value at 5.1 million. In fact, I think he's a decent option, but Chelsea have dropped off a cliff in recent weeks, and Enzo Fernandez has played in a deeper position, so I think his FPL potential has actually fallen off a cliff, just like Chelsea's results in recent weeks. And at Enzo's price and below, you've got Jacob Murphy and Amad Diallo. They're the 2 outstanding picks in that budget price range, and if you stretch a little bit more, Morgan Rogers is a much more consistent FPL asset who plays in more advanced positions than Enzo Fernandez. Chelsea's fixtures remain good for the next couple of weeks, but I think Enzo Fernandez is worth selling, and if you've got a Chelsea triple up, I'd probably trim it down to 1 or 2 at this moment in time. But Enzo has 3 goals and 4 assists this season, 8 big chance created, and 66 FPL points. I don't think he offers bad value. In fact, he's a decent FPL option, but with the recent positional change, Chelsea's form, and the alternatives elsewhere, I think it makes sense to sell Enzo Fernandez. Savio or Savinho is one of the most exciting wingers in the Premier League, and he's really stepped up with his output in recent weeks. He got a hat-trick of FPL assists over the weekend against West Ham, and he got another double-digit haul against Leicester City with a goal and an assist. He broke that 26 to 27 game goal drought, but I just think Savio is a quality winger, and he's only going to get better and better. It all started with that Everton performance where he played extremely well, and I think his confidence grew from that point onwards. But I wouldn't buy him in just yet. He should be added to the watch list, and it's not like 1 or 2 months ago when I said Savio's a skip because he had that goal drought, his confidence was low, and Man City were doing terribly. But that's back-to-back wins for Man City. They're getting back on track, and they can get another 2 or 3 victories over the next 4 game weeks. But there are some tough games in there, like Chelsea at home and Arsenal away, and even Brentford won't be easy considering their home record at the GTEC Community Stadium. But could Savio get another big haul in the upcoming weeks? It's possible, and I think Ipswich Town away would be the most likely, but it isn't a guarantee, and I think you're probably going to see a bit more consistency from Savio from now on, but 5 to 8 pointers more than the double-digit hauls we've seen in the last 2 game weeks. Savio could be a purchase though when Man City's fixtures turn for the better, but for now, I'd skip Savio and focus on the likes of Morgan Rogers, Gordon, and Mbeumo. The second most transferred out player this week is James Maddison, but he also remains the 5th highest scoring midfielder in FPL. He's 1 point shy of the Centurion mark with 8 goals and 5 assists and an XGI figure of 8.53. He's actually getting benched a lot recently. He was ill over the weekend against Newcastle, so maybe that played a big part, but we're going to see him and Johnson rotate a lot, with Kulusevski shifted to the centre when Brennan Johnson starts football matches, and Maddison has a decent record against some of his upcoming opponents. He could do really well against Leicester, he got an assist against them in the reverse fixture, and Everton away is a very promising fixture when Spurs are on it. They actually battered them as well earlier this season by a 4-0 scoreline. Brentford away is good for attackers. Arsenal not so much, but Maddison got a brace of assists last season at the Emirates, setting up Heung-min Son on 2 occasions. So I think Maddison is worth skipping if you are looking for a midfielder. Gordon and Mbeumo should be your priorities, and maybe Luis Diaz would be ahead of Maddison in the pecking order. But similar to the Colombian, Maddison will have his minutes managed. He's going to be subbed off early. He's fairly injury prone as well. But when Maddison does play, he's going to get some good returns. So if you do have Maddison, you might want to hold him actually over the coming weeks. But if you have a clear route to Gordon or Mbeumo, I wouldn't hesitate whatsoever, because they offer the consistency with the returns and the minutes as well. And Maddison can be very frustrating from time to time. He has this pattern of starting really strongly in a Premier League season, then getting injured or being left out of the team, and then ending the campaign quite poorly actually. But when Maddison is on it, there aren't many better midfielders in the Premier League, but I would skip him at this moment in time. That wraps up the first transfer tips video of 2025. Thank you very much for your support across all social media platforms. On screen, you can see the most transferred out players. Nicholas Jackson is top, with Maddison, Diaz, Cunha, and Enzo completing the top 5. I've covered some of these other options in my recent transfer tips podcast, so be sure to check them out as well. I think Matheus Cunha is worth holding on to, and in certain cases, I'd even be looking to buy him. I see him as the 2nd or 3rd best forward in FPL in the long term, despite Wolves having some terrible fixtures on the horizon. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. I'm to get this to the 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 32,000 subscribers. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, FPL League Draft Hound, as well as Spotify can also be found in the description. The same goes for Blue Sky, which I've recently joined, and let's see what's in store for us on that social media platform. I wish you all the best of luck for Gameweek 21 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.